Hey, what's up? David Cohen here with Learn Now Effects, and welcome back to another exciting Resolve tutorial. And in this week's tutorial, we're going to be making this. So let's grab a new project and get started. Go into our project settings. We're going to create a project. My usual settings are 4K, but since this is actually a very intensive project, I'm going to make it something like 1280 by 720, 24 frames a second, and video format also I'm going to select HD, 720 24, and I'm going to click Save. Now let's grab a new composition, right click, create a new composition. Let's make it 24 frames a second, 5 seconds long, and we're just going to click on create, drag this onto our timeline, select the composition, and go straight onto Fusion. First thing we need to do once we're in Fusion, we're going to take our media out node, drag it all the way to the corner, and right click anywhere on the grid and go to Arrange Tools. Make sure to check the grid and options, select orthogonal pipes. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go Control Spacebar. We're going to search for a P emitter. Next, we're going to add a P renderer. Drag this here. And this whole particle system in Fusion, we haven't gone into it a lot yet, but if you are familiar with Stardust, it's very similar. You have a particle emitter, a renderer, you have turbulence, directional force. It's very similar, and I think that Fusion's particle system is a lot more powerful. So let's go on into our particle emitter. We're going to look at our renderer, and as you can see, it's a 3D render. This is our default. We need to set it to 2D. So we go into our renderer, and we need to select 2D. All right. So we're going to zoom out, and for image, I'm going to go into our particle render and go into the image here. And I'm going to uncheck this auto resolution, and I'm going to make it about 500 by 500 just so it'll display smoothly, but you can make it up to 2160 by 2160. That's as big as it can get. If you're in the free version, in the studio version, you can get it like 16K by 16K, which is a ridiculous size. It's huge, but you know, I'm just doing it small, but you can make it as large as you want. So we're going to go to region in the particle emitter, go to region, and we're going to change it from sphere to line. So we're just gonna scroll down to the bottom. We're gonna take the first point of the line, put it somewhere here, and the second part over here. Make sure it's straight. It can even go outside of the frame, more or less. It don't have to be perfectly straight, but some more or less like that. Okay, so if we look closely, we see our particles. If we click play, and they're all here, and that's the problem. So we're going to zoom out now, and we're going to add a particle directional force, P directional force. Just going to click on add, and in directional force, we're going to set the direction instead of -90 to just 90. So let's see what we get. All right, so our particles are going up, but this isn't nearly enough particles, so we need to go into our particle emitter, and for now we can set it to like 100, maybe 500. Let's leave it at 100 for now, then we'll add more later. So we're going to go back into our particle emitter and go to lifespan and bring it down to say 30, maybe even a little less. 16. I think 20 would be a good place. I think 20 is fine. So let's just click play. Drag the playhead to the beginning. So we have this. As you can see, they're more or less in straight lines, so that's not good. So we need to turn up the number variance and the lifespan variance. So we get something like this, a little, much more even amount. So we get like a nice wall of particles. So control spacebar, we need to add P turbulence, and that's going to make it look more like fire. So in our turbulence, we're going to go and bring up the Z strength, bring up the Y strength, and bring up the density. So if I were to click play on that, looks a lot more like fire, as you can see. We can bring up the strength a little even more, bring up the density some more. I think we bring down the density just a little bit. And that's good. Looks pretty nice. So this is our particle system, and that's basically it for the particle system. We're just going to move this to the side, and we're going to pre-compose it. Just right click and select, oh wait, we're not in After Effects, this is Fusion, that's just a joke. So after our p-renderer, we're going to control spacebar and search for blur. And regular blur's fine, don't need directional blur or Gaussian blur. I think regular blur's fine. Just gonna look at it. What we get is not really blurred, so we're just gonna bring up the blur size. And I'm just going to right click on the flow and go to options and uncheck checkered underlay so you can see this a little bit better. So I'm not sure if how well you see it, but it looks kind of like fire. So I'm just going to move this to the side. To this, I'm going to add a soft glow. It's going to start building upwards now. All right, now you can see it much better. I'm just going to bring this here. To this, oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to do. We're going to go back into our P renderer and we're going to go to image and make sure the depth is set to float 16. So here's our fire. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to search for an effect called sharpen. You can try unsharp mask, but I think sharpen works good. So we're just going to bring up the amount slightly, something like that. All right, nice. So now we're going to make it look more heat distorted, something really nice. So we're going to search for a fast noise, FN. And one more thing, you have to make sure that the particle emitter has to be always a square, 500 by 500, 2000 by 2000, 1000 by 1000. Make sure that it's a square, because when we're going to be turning this line into a circle, if it's not a square, it's going to be an oval instead of a circle. So I'm just letting you know that from the beginning, so you won't have to troubleshoot later. So we're going to look at our fast noise now, and we're going to go back to image, and we're going to uncheck auto resolution again, and we're going to make it 500 by 500. All right, so here's our fast noise. I'm going to go to the noise properties, bring up detail, bring up the contrast a little bit, bring up the scale, and bring up the seeth rate. So if I bring this to the beginning, you'll see that it's animated. Yeah, like that. You can try discontinuous because it looks more like heat distortion, and inverted also, very nice. But we're just going to experiment for now. So here's our fast noise. We're going to leave it there. And we're going to add a displace node. So we're just going to write displace. Here it is. I'm going to click add. And from here, we're going to pipe the input into the main input of the displace node. And for the displacement map, we're going to use the fast noise. So as you can see, everything's nice and clean because we have the grid snapping and the orthogonal pipes. Everything is clean. Everything is organized. So here are particles. Let's get it to a frame where we can actually see what's going on. We go to our displacement and bring up the refraction strength. Something like this. Maybe bring up the spread a little bit. Just a little bit. All right, very nice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a transform node. So here from the toolbar, we're going to add transform. And we're going to also add a rectangle mask. And this is going to make sense later. So let me show you the problem first, and then we can get back to this. we're going to control spacebar search for coordinate space. And here's our coordinate space. Doesn't look right, huh? So we need to change the shape from polar to rectangular. And this looks more like a shockwave already. So as you can see, we have this seam here, which isn't pretty. And one more thing we should do, we should add another transform before that. So we're going to add another transform node and to look at it in our viewer. So we have this. Now we need to set the edges to mirror. And instead of view size and aspect, I'm going to uncheck this and we're going to get X and Y size. So I'm going to bring the X size like this. So we get something more, because when you put it into the coordinate space, it stretches it out. So it looks less like fire and more like just some kind of smoke thing. And it doesn't look nice at all. So when we're going to put it into this transform, we're just gonna squeeze it together, add more detail. So when it becomes stretched, it looks more like fire. So about that seam, we see that it looks more like fire already, but this seam is still here. We're going to take this to the separate viewer and the transform. This is our transform. We're going to take our rectangle mask and we're going to stretch it to the bottom and almost to the edges. Alright, now we're going to set our transform to flip horizontally. Here it is. Yeah, sorry about that. And our mask, we want to invert the mask. Alright, so we have this. So we're going to bring up the soft edge of our mask, and that slowly gets rid of the seam. Now, we have this. It looks almost like a shockwave. So what we're going to add is, we're going to add a duplicate node. Duplicate. And we should probably clean this up a little bit, so I'm just gonna, and we're gonna bring the duplicate up here. So it becomes brighter because the duplicate is right above it. So we are going to bring the time offset up a little bit. We're going to change the angle and then bring down or up the size, depends. You want it to become smaller or larger. I'm just gonna bring it like this. Yeah. So it's pretty ugly now. So what we should add to this is a CC node. Yeah. Just shift and drag this out of here, bring this down and attach the CC node after the duplicate. Even though it doesn't really matter. So we're going to bring it down to blue, something like this. Yeah. So we can go back here and bring the displacement maybe to XY instead of radial. And we're going to bring up the X refraction. Maybe the Y. Yeah, let's bring up the Y refraction instead. A lot of things to play with. So this is what we get. And it looks so blurry because we're working in 500 by 500. So this really isn't going to be that pretty. So if this was 2000 by 2000, it would be a lot more clear, a lot better looking than this. Anyway, so what we can do is we can bring up the blur, the original blur. You can see what's going to happen. We can bring it down. If we bring it down, we're going to see that it's actually particles. Yeah. So we should just bring it up until just to the point where we don't see that it's particles. Yeah. So to this we're going to add another displace. Alright. And we're going to copy this fast noise, or we can use the instance of it. I'm just going to copy it, paste it here, and here's our fast noise. And we can try, this is what I was talking about, we can try using discontinuous and see how well that goes. So we see not much changed. So since it's already radial, we can turn this one to discontinuous, which we did. And we're going to look at the displace, bring up the displacement, refraction strength like this. Not that much. And we should bring down the scale, we should bring up the scale of this and bring up the spread of that. So we can make this discontinuous, inverted maybe, and go to the displace and bring down the refraction strength and bring up the spread. So we have this. Yeah, pretty nice. We can add another duplicate node. Per se, we can add a soft glow just to give it a little. Yeah, the soft glow can wait. What we can do, we can change the color. You can change the color to whatever you want. We can try red. I think blue is nice for this tutorial. Oh, so one thing I forgot to do is I told you that later we're going to have to add more particles. So we can change this number to like 500 and everything's going to get slower, but you're about to see more detail and everything. Yeah, something like that. Now we can blur it a little bit more. Soft glow, we can bring this down. Yeah, and in this duplicate, we can turn the duplicates to like 4. I was about to say 3. Yeah, so as we can see, we have these ugly looking rings. So one thing we should do is in our particle directional force, we should add another one. P directional force, and this one's actually set to the default value of -90. So we should go here to the probability and set it to like 0.2, 0.2, 0. Maybe 3 or 4. Experiment with the values until you get something interesting. As you can see here, we have something like that. So we should also play around with the number variance more and position variance also. Alright, there it is. Alright, so we're going to go through every node and see what we can change. Yeah, we should probably bring the blur up once more. Yeah, so this looks like fire as you can see. We're going to add a proper color correction in just a moment. So let's go look back at our coordinate space and see what we got. Yeah, so we can go back into our duplicate node. We can bring up the size instead. And if you really want to see this with higher detail, we can just add a scale node and bring up the scale until we can actually see some kind of detail. Yeah, that's a lot slower once it's in that scale node, because you have to count more pixels. As we can see, the soft glow is a little bit too much. We need to bring down that gain. So we're almost there. Maybe add a little bit more displacement. Yeah, so we'll just look here instead of at the scale because this is just taking too long. Might wanna, yeah. And we're going to add a transform. We can go to our transform, go to size, right click, or actually you can click on this diamond button, and we go to frame 0 and we bring the size down to like 0. So if I were to play this, we'd get this very linear animation, very, yeah, not really pretty. And we can add another color correction. And at frame closer to 100 maybe, we go to frame 90. No, not that far. Frame, alright, let's take it frame 90. Alright, so we're going to keyframe the brightness. And we go to frame 100 and bring the brightness down. And that's also going to be a very linear animation. So if I were to play this, we'll play with the splines in just a moment. Alright, so that's the very linear animation, and we need to play with the splines to make it ease in and ease out. So here it is, here's our shockwave, and it looks nice. If you want, I said that this video doesn't have any plugins, but you can get rid of this soft glow per se and bring it here. There's an excellent fuse called X Glow made by my friend Brian Ray, and it works really well, especially in Resolve. So we're just gonna bring down the gain because it's a very small image. And I like to say that it works very similar to, let's say, optical glow from Red Giant. Bring up the glow size maybe a little bit. Bring up the gain, bring up the fall off. Surely looks real hot. Makes everything a little bit slower, but it's a really good fuse. We can add the glow saturation, make the glow color yellow. There are a lot of things, probably shouldn't saturate it that much. It's really good at adding color to your icons. So once we're here, we can add another displace, like we like. Just gonna add another displace. So we can just take the same fast noise and pipe it into here. Add some more displacement after the glow because it looks actually cool when you displace something after the glow. Too much. And we bring up the spread. Yeah, there it is. There's our shockwave. Looks really displaced, and when it's after the glow, it looks really nice. So we can go back to the color corrector, and we can set the color to blue, so it can be just like the one I showed you in the preview. Shadows, midtones, we set it to blue. Highlights, we set to blue. And now in this X glow, which is actually probably shouldn't use that color corrector at all, when you use it to color something, it's just amazing. It's a free plugin, it's a free fuse that you can get on Reactor. I'm not sure if there's an optional donation or not because a lot of the things he posts don't have optional donations, but this is a really nice looking thing. As you can see, it adds some real vibrance, really good color to this shockwave. So if we go to the beginning, we'll see how this slowly becomes a big shockwave. All right, so there it is. Now, the last thing we should do is we're going to play with our splines. So we're going to go to transform size. I'm gonna just take a little bit of space here, and we should just click this fit button, and we're just gonna take these points, both of the keyframes, click Shift S, that makes it smooth. We can leave it like this, but we want it to be like an explosive move in. So I'm just gonna make it like that, and I'm gonna pull this one. It doesn't really matter, don't have to be perfectly straight, because when something is on over the core, when something happens over the course of like 6 frames, you really don't see such of a difference. And the color corrector as well, we're just going to fit the animation, and we're going to select both keyframes, Shift S, and we're gonna leave it like that, ease in and ease out. It doesn't need to like explode or anything like that. So we close the spline, and our shockwave is ready. So you would have done this in about 1,000 by 1,000. That would have been much better, much higher quality results. And if you wanted to render this, you just pipe it into the media out. But honestly, I recommend using a saver node instead. So you just control spacebar, search for SV. And a saver is much better than adding to the media out, because what I noticed is that when you do some really heavy effects in Fusion, that the that the media out, when you render it on the render tab, it drops frames, and not only that, it drops certain parts, certain nodes in the frames. I'm not sure if that's a problem that I'm just having, or that's what it is. But if you would add the saver, you would search for the directory and go over here to the Fusion and click on render all savers, and that's basically it. It's very simple, and I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you like this tutorial, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next tutorial. Thanks. See you next time.